about Sherlock Holmes that you love so much?
Well, single best character in fiction. I mean, if you're going to take a vote in these things, he's the character most often portrayed, most often resurrected, most popular character in fiction, most easy to like character in fiction. That's what I like about him. It's the best thing ever.
And why did you want to update it to the modern day?
Well, the real question, kind of in a way, that Mark and I started to ponder is why isn't it updated to the modern day? Most things are. But no one ever thinks about James Bond being set in the 1950s or even the 1960s. They always think, what's automatic? I mean, Casino Royale is lauded as the most faithful James Bond film, and yet it's set, several decades after the novel. Most things are updated. Most things are just set in the contemporary world because what does it matter when it's set? And for a long, long time, Sherlock Holmes was exactly the same.
How closely did you stick to A Study in Scarlet for A Study in Pink?
There are several absolutely key things that are taken from A Study in Scarlet. The method of the murder is the same. The job of the murderer is the same. The story of Sherlock and John meeting is very much the same, introduced by Stamford at Bart's hospital. All that is the same. I departed at every other point where it was sort of useful to do so, to turn it into more of a thriller. In other words, to treat it sort of the way, not to treat it with reverence, but to treat it, well, that's a good bit, we'll have that. Sort of the way, in a way, they did the James Bond films. They take the good bits of Fleming and discard the bits that weren't working for them.
Are you worried about fans of the original novels saying it shouldn't be set in the modern day?
When I used to watch the Basil Rathbone, Nigel Bruce movies, that's what I used to think. I used to think they shouldn't be set in the modern day, or 1940s as it was then. I was watching them in the 1970s. I used to think, I wish they hadn't done that. I wish they kept it Victorian. But part of me was also thinking, gosh, these are a damn sight more fun than those rather more boring Sherlock Holmes films I've been watching. So, yes, I expect them to go, I wish they'd just done it properly. But then I think Sherlock Holmes fans, I could be wrong, but I think Sherlock Holmes fans will actually rather love what we've done, because they'll see there's a fanboy level of detail going into this. That we nail our colours to the mast. You couldn't watch this as a Sherlock Holmes fan and not realise it was made by Sherlock Holmes fans.
What did you think of Benedict Cumberbatch as Sherlock?
Benedict is the only person we've ever auditioned for this part, the only actor who's ever sent the part of Sherlock. Sue and I were watching Atonement, and we saw Benedict in that, and we immediately thought, he's a bit Sherlock Holmes. We mentioned him to Mark, and he thought Mark thought Benedict was a brilliant idea and knows him. So we got him in very, very quickly. He sat and read for it, and really, it was so, well, that's going to be it. He's the Holmes of this generation. He's the one who looks right and talks right. It's an odd part. You actually have a view on what Sherlock Holmes looks like in quite an acute way. And he sort of fits that bill, and he's a brilliant, brilliant Sherlock Holmes. Not often you get, one of the sort of hottest rising young actors of his generation happens to be the right one to play Sherlock Holmes. So if you've got that all in one place, then you jump at it.
How did you approach Sherlock differently to Doctor Who?
Well, I don't even really think of them as, I just think of them as different things. I don't sit there and think, how do we make this different to Doctor Who? In fact, quite necessarily, I have to not think in those terms, because there are things about Doctor Who and Sherlock Holmes that are not by accident similar. When at the very, very beginning of Doctor Who, very, very beginning, when William Hartnell was first playing it, they sort of get it wrong right at the start, and the Doctor isn't the hero. And he isn't that brilliant. He's just a sort of senile old man who's daffing about the place, being a bit of a nuisance. So when sort of David Whittaker started to realise that, who was the script editor, the Doctor should be the hero of this show, and he deliberately and avowedly says, look, let's make him more like Sherlock Holmes, let's make him brilliant. So the commonalities between the Doctor and Sherlock Holmes are there. They're sort of, I suppose, are weirdly opposite in that the Doctor always strikes me as sort of like an angel who aspires to be human, whereas Sherlock Holmes is a human being who aspires to be a god. So there are sort of opposite paths. In a curious way, I sort of always think of the Doctor as being slightly more human than Sherlock Holmes, because he values those things. He wants to have fun. He wants to be silly. He's very, very emotional and sentimental and silly, whereas Sherlock Holmes is trying to put all that behind him. So I think they'd have a tempestuous relationship if they were to meet.
What was it like working with Benedict and Martin together?
Well, that was something. It was one of the easiest things in a way we've ever done, because the instant, somewhere or other we still have the very first audition they did together. And just the mere presence of Martin in the room changed Benedict's performance. They immediately liked each other. They immediately seemed complementary in a way. The tall, thin man and the short man, the two very different acting styles. Martin's absolute fastidious realism, and Benedict's, equally real, equally brilliant, but very much the leading man, very much the sort of striking, exotic figure. The two of them in the same screen, you just, well, that's perfect. They belong together. They just absolutely look as though they should be a part of a double act.
Would you ever write any original Sherlock stories?
Well, we sort of have. I mean, in a way, all these stories have their derivation in, all three of them, in Sherlock Holmes stories, but there's an awful lot of new material. Absolutely, we'll write new ones. Absolutely. And we'll make the old ones new. I mean, the second one, Steve Thompson's The Blind Banker, is if you know your stuff, you'll recognise that as an adaptation of The Dancing Men. But you really have to know your stuff because he's changed every single detail. So it's kind of a new story, but it does come from a nugget of, a very brilliant nugget of Sir Arthur's.